No Game, No Life, Volume 6, Chapter 5, Part 2. 1 divided by 0 equals selfless. Atop a faraway hill, where the collapse of heaven and earth seemed distant.
Zechner report. Reproduced successfully with 72.8% output. Synchronizing.
Her report delivered to Riku, an ex-machina woman raised her arm.
Lucin. Org. 0000. Stale martyr. This is for you.
Appearing out of thin air, a gun the size of a small tower pierced the earth. The vortex of violence they'd just witnessed, portending the end of the world. The combined energy of the godly smite, Akasiance, the E-bombs, and the far cries, all intermingled. Over 70% of that energy had been reproduced in this object. Riku alone, no, any number of people, would likely have been unable to lift it. Towering several times Riku's height, it was too gigantic to be rightly called a gun. It was more like a stake. The gun, muzzle thrust in the ground, barrel standing on its own, quietly waited for someone to pull its trigger. That is, it waited for the signal, for Riku to draw it. His eyes black and unreflective, Riku gazed at it, mute and expressionless, till the ex-machina broke the silence.
Report. Well then, units will return to Battlefront, so with that...
It turned to leave, but a question from Riku stopped it. Just now, making this, how many tools broke?
Answer. 21 clusters input, 5 units remaining, 4,802 units lost.
5 units remaining, huh?
Affirmation. Do you have any other questions?
Not a question so much as a confirmation. I just wait for you guys to strip Artosh's ether, and I pull this guy's trigger and pierce the core of the planet. And the Suniaster will manifest. That's it, right?
Affirmation. Neither Artosh nor anyone else will die. Rules upheld.
Closing his eyes like darkness, Riku clenched the ring she had left him and reminisced. Huh. It was so simple.
Reporting frankly, there was an error in Brarjui's calculation.
At Riku's hideout, the ex-machina called Enzig went on to explain that convergence, even if 32 Omweg stations were aligned, was impossible.
There is a 10 to the power of negative 609 second gap that would prevent the Omweg from drawing all of the combatants' attacks downward. Instead, the power would collide and form a vortex, assigning it directionally and causing convergence thereafter. It's impossible.
An error in Shui's calculation, so minute as to cast a pall over the quiet of Nirvana. This was the conclusion Ex Machina had reached by parallel processing across multiple clusters. Hearing this, Riku lowered his eyes and smirked. Even if everything had gone well, they'd still have failed. Riku had just about resigned himself, but Enzig wasn't finished.
With the 24 detours installed by the prior, it is possible to divert it.
And?
Under the original conditions, the whirling power nebula would converge, then diffuse in all directions. However, because your plan to install 32 Omweg in a circle was aborted at 24, there is a hole to the southwest.
In other words, Riku saw where he was going and jumped in. So it is not possible to aim it down, but southwest is feasible, you mean? Nodding once, Ensign continued.
I shall provide supplementary data.
Just like a tool.
1. Ex Machina has an armament called Himmelbrockrufen that emulates the Heavenly Smite.
Nothing more than data captured by instruments.
2. As the prior, in fact, also recognized, if the Suniester is manifested using the power released by piercing the planet, the probability is 52% that it will appear in the hands of Artosh. This is representative of the extent of his ether.
The remark made Riku wonder again. What the hell is ether? But ignoring his reaction, Ensign continued.
Take these facts into account, Spieler. To correct strategy, input command.
Yes, they were machines, mere tools. And the one who utilized them, the one who made the decisions, was the user, Riku. That makes things simple. We will fake a preemptive strike from Artosh's base. Cutting off emotion, gazing at the strategic map with eyes that reflected no light, Riku elaborated. Flat, calm, cold, calculating, thorough. Fire heavenly smites from behind Aventime at the Union, without killing anyone. That should be enough to prompt Think Nirvalan to move. Then they'll smash all their firepower together for us. After we get that off the southwest, then... Riku's hand, arranging the pieces on the board, almost stopped for a moment. But he kept going. A weapon that emulates, reproduces, and focuses energy. I'm sure Ex Machina can make one, right?
Affirmative. If 21 of 32 clusters are input, at least 70% reproduction is possible.
Moving his hand to his chest to grab the lock that creaked, Riku continued. And that will be enough to pierce the core of the planet and materialize the Suniaster?
Affirmative. If 4,807 units are sacrificed to convert 70% of the original power and fire it through the core, the source of the spirit corridors will fail, erupting with sufficient magnitude to manifest the Suniaster.
Which means a death sentence for 5,000 of Shree's, my wife's, breath. Riku shook off the flash of sentiment and once more chanted as if ripping his chest. Lock it. As he reiterated as to remind himself. The rules do not prohibit the destruction of tools, just like I threw away my arm.
Correct.
With that, Riku posed the final question. Can the remaining 21 clusters neutralize Artosh without killing him?
Affirmative.
The Godly Smite is a strike that aggregates all the Flugel's heavenly smites in Artosh's power into a single blast. The Flugel will be neutralized, and Artosh will be weakened. In this window, we shall strip Artosh of his ether.
An old Deus stripped of his ether is likely to be deactivated for 100 years. If we achieve this and then bore through the source of the spirit corridors, it is almost certain that the Suniaster will manifest in your hand, Spieler.
The way he said it made Riku avert his face to hide a smirk. This guy is really awkward, he thought. Just like Shree. If he's going to pretend to be a heartless machine, he should figure out that machines don't say likely or almost certain.
We are machines without hearts, mere tools, faithful executors of commands, so...
And, most fundamental of all, thought Riku as he lowered his eyes.
When you see the light of Artosh being stripped of its ether, do not hesitate. Pull the trigger and acquire the Suniaster.
Don't look away when you tell a lie, damn machine. No sooner had Riku completed his reminiscence than the female ex machina bowed, saying,
Report. Well, then, unit will join Battlefront. Spieler Riku.
So the race professing themselves mere machines to the very end left him with words they didn't even realize they hadn't got the hang of.
Fortune in battle be yours.
And she leaped.
From Enzig to Julius, Kafma, Luis, Martha, Nord, Otto, Ukon, Paula, Quelle, Ricard, Samui, Skul, Esset, Theodor, Ulrich, Uba, Will, Wilhelm, Iskati, Upsilon, Zakaria, all 9,177 units remaining in Ghost Cluster. Bethel ist nur einer. State the souls we have been granted by prior suite support Spieler Riku as follows. Terminate the ether of the old Deus Artosh. Eliminate all obstacles and ignore all damage to achieve this. As a supplement, I conclude this command with a declaration somewhat uncharacteristic of an ex machina. Let us go without life, and go away with life. Aus. Jawohl.
Mocking himself as hardly an ex machina, and Zig apologized for his lie.
I am sorry, Spieler. Even after the godly smite, to face Flugel, Heavenheim, Artosh. To strip Artosh of his ether without killing anyone is impossible. To conquer him at all strength limits. Please, I hope you will think of it this way, that tools without hearts went haywire on their own.
Thus, the living things that professed to be lifeless things now shouted aloud. All units, permission granted to use all armaments without restrictions.
Lucen, Enderprokrufen.
Who do you think you are? You scrap? Israel shouted as she took up a position in the corridor leading to Artosh's throne room. She wrung out what little remained of her power to light up the crimson sky with countless blades of energy, several of which intersected with the enemy. She just barely could make out several ex machinas, launching blue light just before they blew to bits. The full power, godly smite, had just been fired. The Flugel had all but lost their power. Some couldn't even move. As if they'd planned it. No, they must have. The Machine Legion approached as if to cover the sky. Aaronleaf, a ruler of Jagonia, had been put down by 1/4 of the forces now descending in full. Only a few Flugel, like the later articles, still preserved a modicum of power, and Israel, together with Evenheim, defended vigorously. But they could only do so much. The anti-air cannon steadily blasted ex machinas, but the Machine Legion stormed forward, seemingly heedless of damage. What struck them must have been what Jabro described, the weapon imitating Aaronleaf's far cry. A volley struck them broadside, blowing away the handful of Flugel who still had a bit of fight left in them, one after another. The ex machinas didn't spare a second glance for the Flugel who were immobile, who they deemed no obstacle. But that wasn't the half of it. What were they doing? The machines were even attacking the Union fleet as it attempted to seize the opportunity to invade. The attacks weren't lethal. They just robbed the ships of their combat capabilities.
Do not resist. We wish to kill as few of you as we can.
This seemed to be the message as the machine swarm attempted to flood past Jabro, who'd been brought to her knees. You? Screwing with me? Huh? You specks of dust? She knew where they were heading, straight to the throne room, to Lord Artosh. You telling me to stand by while Lord is slain? Is that it, you heap of scrap? She screamed, Israel's halo deformed and broke irregularly. The swarm of ex machinas closing on her. She thrust her hand out in front of them.
You think all we know how to do is cast Heavenly Smite over and over?
That instant, the distance between them exploded. She'd applied the flugel shift to space. The air itself was gouged out, and the rebound tore forward and shattered everything. Space twisted, warped, and everything in its radius was reduced to steel chunks. How many dozens were caught in that attack? But that was her limit. Her back against the door leading to the throne, Israel, like Jabril before her, had exhausted our power and assumed the form of a child, panting. Even so, Israel stared daggers, making it plain that none would pass, but a cold voice reached her ear.
From Purher to Beveler. Analysis of flugel shift mechanism complete. So this is what it means to feel the blood drain from your face?
Israel recognized her error a bit too late. The ex machinas analyzed the attack they just suffered and commenced construction on a device to replicate it. They'd never been able to analyze the shift before, since it was directed at the caster. But as an attack, the implication was confirmed by the communication she'd overheard.
From Zeigner to remaining units. Design of Shirapokrufen complete. Synchronizing.
At the same time, behind Israel, a flash of light shot through the door to Artosh's throne room.
Target location observed. Sharing across all units. Immediate enemy neutralization is complete. Shifting. Cryo. Shirapokrufen.
Not even giving Israel time to regret her failure, the ex machina issuing this update vanished. Flying be damned. Israel could hardly even walk straight at this point, but even so, as if crawling, she passed through the shattered doorway to the foot of her lord. Shifting to his final destination, the throne room, Enzig found himself greeted by a massive man. It was the first time Enzig had observed him. To be precise, no unit had previously observed him and survived long enough to share the data. Therefore, no data was available, but he didn't need reference data for positive identification. The thing seated on the throne, its presence overwhelming, its golden eyes savage even in its state of repose, chin resting on his fist, bold, proud, and unmoved. Its very being announced itself the strongest of all, the god of war, and his target, the old Deus Artosh. To the ex machinas who, one by one, joined Enzig, their ranks swelling into a swarm.
I permit it. Name thyself.
Artosh extended a courtesy, his simple utterance rocking space and introducing variation into their collective observation equipment.
Rejection. Tools do not name themselves.
Artosh laughed at Enzig's response.
Such jest.
And time creaked.
Wherefore shall I ask the names of tools? I ask the name of mine enemy.
Enzig did not answer. It was not his answer to give. Maintaining a silence, he simply assessed the battlefield and waited for the remaining units capable of combat to arrive. Surviving forces, 872 units. Units able to assimilate? Asira Apocrypha, 701. In other words, even if all units arrived, their maximum force would be 701 units. Not even enough for 2 conventional clusters.
To think that we could be so depleted by exhausted flugel in a single phantasma.
Enzig smirked. The Spieler had pointed out that the tool's mathematics were critically incomplete. For a machine to acknowledge this was a strange twist of irony. As Enzig silently considered this, Artosh's smile,
I approve. That is as it should be.
Simply deepened.
That the strongest of all, who resoundeth across 3,000 worlds, should face the weakest of all, on whom nothing in the world looketh twice. It is meet.
And, sliding his cheek of his fist,
I have awaited thee, a warrior, fit to be mine enemy.
Artosh rose from his throne. With that mere motion,
From Ensig to remaining units. Is this unit error?
all ex machina observation equipment indicated that its mass increased. No, Enzig's assessment was incorrect. This was no optical error. It was simply that the man before them had stood. Correction. The quality of associated energy had increased. Recorrection. Not energy. The entity data itself was increasing, as if what hadn't existed was coming to be. But finally, all 701 units gathered in the throne room answered Enzig's astonishment.
9.
They all observed the same phenomena. It was impossible. It violated all laws of thermodynamics. Even magic only twisted the laws of physics using spirits within the scope of exchange of energy. This defied all explanation. Nevertheless, every unit's sensors produced the same conclusion, namely, that its mass was increasing, that the concepts which enveloped the heavens, the earth, and the planet were taking shape and form.
Impossible. What is happening?
After discharging his godly smite, Arch's power should have been less than 12% its usual level. This was the unanimous estimate of every sharer and purifer, and yet, as if reading their thoughts, perhaps actually doing so, Artosh professed,
The strongest is strongest for that he is the strongest. What meaning hath increase or decrease of power?
I see.
Enzig accepted it. The sentiment was entirely irrational. The machines now possessed emotions they could not help to react with.
True.
The concept of strongest, if that is what it is. Consider the automatons who had gained hearts, and being somewhat anomalous themselves in a not dissimilar fashion, they had arrived at a hypothesis about something long unknown.
A concept that has gained an identity. Is this not a law with will?
Which meant that ether was.
There is nothing over which ye must fret. The strongest is I, and the weakest is all others.
Hearing Artosh's fierce yet somehow self-mocking declaration, Enzig smirked.
All units who share my thoughts, if any of you survive, recess this hypothesis. Yo all.
If ether conformed to this hypothesis, then overthrowing Artosh was theoretically impossible. But Enzig put forward a query.
All remaining sharer and purifer, is ether an observable physical entity? Affirmative.
In that case, there was no issue. All units prepare the algorithm compiled by the Prior to combat the unknown.
Loosen.
Before his eyes, still increasing in mass, a giant, a concept, a phenomenon, perhaps a law. Before the true God who seemed likely to swell until heaven and earth were enveloped, Enzig issued his command. At the moment, it was just a hypothesis.
To gauge the enemy's power is impossible. Then what to do? All that remains is to act as the souls we have been granted command. That is to say, if the enemy is unknown, then all you have to do is anticipate everything you can't anticipate. Don't try to understand. Don't try to calculate. Just believe what you feel and move. Isn't that right, Shui?
Evenheim, in the throne room, staring down at God, 701 living things that professed to be machines roared.
Target Artosh's ether. Hypothesized capacity to distort space-time and even alter natural law every second.
In which case,
Adapt every half second accordingly. I ask all units, is this beyond us? Negative.
no. No matter the foe, no matter the obstacle.
If it touches us, we will adapt. That is who we are. All units, I pray you fight valiantly. Aus. Yowal.
Linking with one another, all units faced the divine enemy, continued to manifest, to swell, and shouted as one.
Loosen.
Gazing upon the oncoming Ex Machina swarm, Artosh delivered a single sentiment in a voice that reverberated across the continent.
Come, display mine ether. Show the quintessence of battle to the world, my dear, true enemy.